and misery that people are feeling. Now you're looking at the guy who has led the effort in this country for $2,000 checks to go to working class adults and $500 for their kids. That is what we need. But what Trump has got to do now is sign the bill.
Trump has signed that bill. That image of Trump, Donald Trump, signing the bill reluctantly. Now, what Sanders is talking about here is basically before Donald Trump had signed the bill, where everybody was screaming at Trump, sign the bill, oh, the babies, you know, that type of stuff. So Donald Trump signs the bill. But because Donald Trump basically shamed the political space by saying, you don't care about Americans, and look at all of this money that you're spending on all of this other stuff that's not America. Pelosi comes out and says, all right, let's raise this to $2,000. Now, under normal circumstances, the people weren't pushing for this. The media had consolidated around Joe Biden's narrative of basically less is perfectly okay. And Pelosi was backing it. Democrats were backing it. Klobuchar said Trump asking for $2,000 is an attack on America. You had the other people basically saying, other Democrats saying, well, the only people who care about this is people on the far left and far right. Nonsense. There's about a quarter, 25%, 20% of this country that hit the skids. And those people need to be helped. Now, Sanders is right. Sanders was one of those people that was pushing for $2,000. $600 is monstrously inadequate. And I got to be honest, I have zero issue with them sending out checks to each and every American, because the only thing those people are going to do is either spend their money or put it in the bank. But hopefully they spend that money for America. The point that I'm making here is spending is the issue. And putting money in people's pocket, especially if you're putting money at the bottom end of the income scale, what's the issue? Do it. What do they always say? Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. They never say that when it's for things that are beneficial to the left. When I'm standing on the throat of the health insurance companies after Medicare for All is passed, and I say, hey, I know a lot of you have lost your jobs, but don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Look at all of these people now with healthcare, and you guys can get your jobs in some kind of program or whatever else. That's akin to whatever you guys were doing prior, but now working in the government. They never say it for that. I want to also point out the $2,000 and the way that it passes the House of Representatives after that, nobody was really for it, gets across that nobody wants to go to their representatives or go to their people and explain to them why they didn't up that money. Why didn't you want to give $2,000 to the American public? But in the way Donald Trump had pointed out in dramatic detail, you were willing to give all of that money for all of these other things. That is not an easy conversation to have. And so many people, many of which were Democrats that weren't on board, got on board. I think it was only 2 Democrats that balked at this. The question becomes, what happens in the Senate? And does that same logic apply, where people are going to be bothered by it? Now, that's assuming it even comes up for a vote. And that's where Bernie Sanders comes in. Bernie, despite being marginalized, despite being called every name but a child of God, despite Sanders taking an L, he is still fighting. Whereas Joe Biden is calling representatives on Democrat and Republican side, telling him, hey, less is okay. So the 1.8 trillion, you don't even need that. 900 billion will be perfectly fine. Less, fine. Instead of Bernie Sanders doing that nonsense, Bernie Sanders is out here fighting and pushing for people to get $2,000. And the way he's doing this is very interesting, and I love it. Do you remember when the Republican Party was using the debt ceiling? They would basically say, all right, this thing that definitely requires attention to, if you don't give us whatever, we're going to do this. Basically, they took it hostage. Sanders is kind of doing that, but he's doing that in a really interesting way. The Republican Party, Democratic Party have basically agreed on the military budget. They want the military budget passed. They are willing to do that in no time, record time. Don't even have to look at it. It's military budget, yeah, agreed, yes. Well, Trump has vetoed the military budget, the National Defense Authorization Act, the $740 billion or whatever. The Democrats and Republicans have enough to override that veto in the House and in the Senate, providing Sanders doesn't filibuster, which Sanders is threatening to do. So think of it this way. Sanders is basically saying, if you don't bring up this $2,000 direct stimulus to the American public for a vote, maybe you don't get that veto. Maybe you don't get that veto override, meaning override the president's veto. Maybe you don't get that. Maybe I filibuster that. Maybe I don't let you get that vote if you don't, at the very least, put up for a vote this $2,000 from the American public. Sanders is using leverage in a really interesting and a damn good way. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, and subscribe. You can always support this content through PayPal or Patreon. So this video is not going to be long, but I wanted to point out a series of tweets that Sanders has put out and basically what is taking place right now in the Senate. House of Representatives passed the $2,000. Of course, again, there will be some people who will vote against that $2,000, but those people have to look their constituents in the face and explain to them why they weren't deserving of money when trillions over the course of decades get stuffed into the pockets of people who don't need it. Put it bluntly, Sanders puts out this. This week on the Senate floor, Mitch McConnell wants to vote to override Trump's veto of the $740 billion defense funding bill and head home for New Year's. I'm going to object until we get a vote on legislation to provide $2,000 direct payment to the working class. Basically, Mitch McConnell ain't going nowhere. This defense bill is not getting passed. I will filibuster until you bring up the $2,000 direct payment. Now, what does this do? It does a few things. A, it draws a circle around this issue and Bernie Sanders. Less Bernie Sanders, but more of the fact that Bernie Sanders is arguing for this issue, that a former presidential candidate is holding up the National Defense Authorization Act for America. He's fighting for America. He's fighting for you to get to $2,000. Now, is media going to cover that? Yeah, probably, because the National Defense Authorization Act in their head needs to pass. And the fact that this is being held up, especially with Donald Trump talking about the COVID thing and the $2,000, that actually may get coverage. Now, the fact that that's getting coverage draws a circle around it and puts more emphasis on the fact of the people who vote against it. I could be wrong. I don't think people invest themselves into media, into politics in the way that people typically do. But for this, they do. At least I think they do. At least more. It is the direct material concerned. Meaning it's one thing where your politics is talking about Russiagate. It's one thing when these guys are doing stuff in Congress and people don't entirely pay attention to it. They see a picture on the newspaper, they see something on flashing on the evening news every so often, but they don't invest themselves. But if you say, Bernie Sanders wants to give you $2,000, and they hear Donald Trump is holding up the bill because he wants to give people $2,000, and then you hear $2,000 passes the House. This is money being... Money's afoot. This is talking about people's real material needs and concerns, especially people who've been hit and adversely affected by what has been basically a government-run either shutting down business, meaning people losing their jobs, or those businesses going belly up because the government basically shut them down, or you have people who just basically can't make their needs because they were employees of those businesses. I am making the point that a lot of this stuff is government driven, even from the standpoint of the competence of dealing with COVID-19. It's the worst of both worlds. You have a virus that runs amok because the government doesn't necessarily deal with it adequately. And then you have these shutdowns that are half-ass. And so instead of you getting a virus that gets under control for a short period of time because you shut down and you did what was necessary and what was right, you have a virus that it's out of control and you have shutdowns. You have the worst of both worlds. Look, my point is this. Drawing a circle around this, and basically showing to the American public, these people are voting against you getting $2,000. Especially if added to that, you could show the amount of trillions that was being shoveled into the gullets of oligarchs for the last X number of years. You could show how the American public have basically been beaten down while the revenue and the money has basically been siphoned, expropriated to the top. If you could have those arguments and show those things just because the media is now paying attention to the fact that $2,000 is pretty much up for grabs, you may get a slice of the American public that pays attention. And in the fact that the public pays attention, it puts pressure on the congressman. Look, when they're messing around under normal circumstances, yeah, I wouldn't imagine that the public knows what's going on. In a case where there's money on the table, yes, I think more of the public pays attention. Sanders continues with this, putting out more tweets. At a time when so many people are facing economic desperation, the $600 direct payment is a step forward, but it's not enough. We need to increase the direct payment to $2,000. Biden wants it. Biden said that half-assed, by the way. Trump wants it. Pelosi wants it. Schumer wants it. Now, Congress must vote for it. Let's be very honest. I don't think any of those people cared about it one way or the other, because at the end of the day, they were willing to pass a bill that didn't have it. Not just didn't have it, didn't even have the stimulus at all. So yeah, they've been shamed into the position of trying to do something about it as Democrats with the Republican president that's on his way out saying, hey, we should do this. Biden half-ass said, yeah, he's okay for it, because what he's going to say, no, I'm not for the direct stimulus payments. Again, being shamed into the behavior. Biden was the one that was willing to give people half of what Pelosi said a few weeks prior was unacceptable. Let's be honest. Let's just be honest. But I feel what Sanders is doing. It's politics, right? And he puts out one more. Along with Vice President-elect Kamala Harris and Senator Ed Markey, I've been fighting for months to get Congress to pass a $2,000 direct stimulus payment for the working class. The House must pass this legislation tomorrow, and the Senate must quickly follow suit. Let's get it done now. This is Bernie. He's trying to rally the troops. Now, again, he was able to basically pick up the mantle that Trump allowed. I mean, it's funny, and they're not going to give Trump credit for this, but I have to be honest. Do you think any of this would have been taking place if Donald Trump didn't come out with that speech where he basically excoriated Congress for allowing a bill to have all of these pork in it, while at the same token the American public is just taking a punch in the face, and in large part because of government behavior? Yeah. The American public should be apoplectic over this. And I got to be honest, if they're not apoplectic, they're not entirely paying attention. You shouldn't have to fight this hard to give the American public assistance. Did they fight that hard to give Wall Street assistance? No, they didn't. Did it in a whim. Didn't think twice about it. And then when it comes to the American public, it's called moral hazard. Nonsense. You realize that they could have, when the Wall Street collapsed, they could have ensured that each and every one of those homeowners had their houses paid off, instead of just giving the money to the bank. Meaning giving the money to the homeowner to pay off the bank allows the homeowner to be made whole and allows the bank to be made whole. You basically have done both, as opposed to just doing one, meaning the Wall Street, and then look at the other one and call it a moral hazard. Fact of the matter is, it was Wall Street that fucked up, and yet they were the one that got the bailout. I'm asking, is it possible that the reason they get the bailout is because they are their, to use the term, base? They're the Democratic base. And just like any other base in a party, they attend to the needs of their base. And in that case, the base hit the skids, and so they attended to the needs. The homeowners, the African Americans, the business owners that needed help. Those are suckers that vote for the party, but that's different than being the base. And so they don't get that much attention. I could be wrong, but I would make the point that 90% of the races are won by the side with the most cash. Democrats tend to cater to the side that are giving them the dollars. And in catering to that side, part of that catering is attending to their needs, especially when things go poorly. If I used to ask I used to have this analogy where I would say, if my dad really cared, if he really cared, if I had $1,000 and I say, hey, there'll be $1,000 here tomorrow, would you be here to get it? The answer would be, of course, yeah. But you don't do that for your kid. Does it matter that you care more about that $1,000 than your kid? The answer is yes. My point is, you accrue around the things that you actually care about. And there's some things that are ideologically driven, where the individuals care about so much, and so they do those things, even though those things are not necessarily in their interests. But my point is, the party, logically, rationally, ignores the suckers that would vote for them unconditionally and pays attention to the people who give them their dollars and who have a choice in whether or not to support them. I think that is the reason for this. That's almost going on somewhat of a side tangent. I'm just pointing out Sanders is still here fighting. And look, the fate of this is less likely in the Senate, just to be blunt. By the same token, those people are going to have to put their name on the list and explain to their constituents why they were not worthy, why they were uniquely not worthy, because other countries around the world attended to their populations. Why is the American worker, person, not uniquely unworthy of $2,000 in direct stimulus, especially considering how the American worker over the course of the last, let's say, decade has been ransacked and basically hit. Again, you can look at the amount of wealth that was transferred to the top 1%, or for that matter, even the top 10%, as compared to the average American worker. Half is living in poverty. Meaning, just before COVID hit, 42% of the population was making $18,000 a year or less. 42%. I hate to tell you this, $30,000 a year, even they don't like to call it poverty, is basically poverty. $18,000 is abysmal. But this is basically what people was living in before COVID hit. Now, there have been some people who've done monstrously well during COVID. The higher the income level, the better off those people are doing. But that makes it that much more vile. Because the lower the income level, the worse those people are doing. The more they were exposed to COVID-19 from the standpoint of their jobs, the least they were likely protected from the standpoint of having an economic base of security on this stuff. And so it bothers me greatly that for whatever reason, the American public doesn't demand this. It doesn't believe that it deserves this. The Democratic Party acts as if this is some kind of handout. This is their own money that we're talking about, meaning this is our own money. We as a collective society make this society run. The people, the individuals make the society go. The people who do the floors, who do the dishes, who do the computer software, who puts the lights up, who makes sure the air is clean. Those are the people that make the society run. And yet you can't get the party, Democratic Party, supposedly the party of the people, at least that's what they keep breathlessly telling me, to do their goddamn jobs. And you can't even get progressives to try to fight for something like Medicare for all on the floor. You need to ask yourself, is this really a representative government if your representatives don't represent you? Like, share, and subscribe. If they don't represent you, caveats. Sanders, Markey, thank you. Many of the others, not so much. We have super chats. Let's see. Bernie Guillotine. Come on. Ben Riley. Remember how Doctor Strange won? He came to bargain and locked his enemy into a loop until it was won. Attrition warfare. Data did something similar in Star Trek in general, episode 21 of season 2, Peak Performance. I love that. Yes. You know what's sad? I know the episode you're talking about. Data gets into a contest. This is a game. Just think of it as chess, a very complicated version of chess. And this being, or this guy, is the greatest at it. He's like a master at it, grandmaster at it. But he's just a man at the end of things. He's just a being. He's just a flesh and blood being. So at the end of it, Data should be able to beat this being, at least by Data's own assessment of this being's capabilities and Data's own capabilities. I'm sympathetic. My brain can do all of this other stuff. I'm fucking phenomenal. I should be able to beat this guy. and Data loses to the guy. Now, what Data didn't realize is that computers play this game differently than human beings. Meaning a human being playing chess plays differently than a computer for obvious reasons. The human being can't look through all of these pathways and all of these corners in a way that a computer can blunt force go through it. So human beings don't evaluate that way. We make a choice. There's certain things that we choose. We say, okay, that doesn't make sense, so I don't have to invest energy into that. A computer will invest energy into that. And invest in energy 20 moves down the line, it may find some kind of weird quirk. Human beings don't do that. And so what the guy was doing is basically playing Data in the same way that human beings play computers oftentimes. They will make it a positional game. They would give these kind of pathways. They would give all of these openings in regards and let the computer kind of flounder. And Data lost. And he couldn't figure out why the fuck he lost. And what he ends up doing is basically saying, all right, I am going to assume that what this guy is giving me are false pathways because I can't really trust my own capabilities in this. So I am just going to not try to win. Now, as somebody who's played people like this is fucking aggravating. It's basically not taking risk. In order to win, it entails risk. When you are in a game and you're trying to win a drawn game, that is the best time for you to lose that game because winning entails risk. For you to attack at all means you have to open yourself for it. There's some kind of belief in self that's required for you to do it. Data lost his belief in himself that he could beat the guy. So his assumption was, I just don't try to win. I just play for a draw. The guy gets up, he gets flustered after some obscene number of moves and goes away. Now Data could sit there for years and do exactly what he did without any issue because he's not going to get bored. He's the computer. That guy's just the man. And so even though that guy could beat Data, if Data was just trying to play the game like a regular person would play it, Data just stopped playing that way. Yeah, I know that episode, right? So that's so sad that I know exactly the episode that you're talking about. I can explain it. But it was, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. But I guess my point for the Sanders thing, Sanders, yeah, he's always hangs around. Yes, he always fights. And I suppose on some of the stuff he picks his battles. On this one, this is very interesting only because they want to basically override a veto of the president. And Sanders is like, yeah, I'm not going to allow you to override that veto of the president unless you allow me a vote on this issue. Not to mention the thing they want to override the veto on is the military budget. Isn't that so weird? 13th Amendment, let's see. People can be owned right. Corporations can be owned right. QED, transitive property, the 13th Amendment, undone. I don't see how that relates. I mean, I know they say corporations are people too, but the corporations are people too is that quirk that ended up in the law. I can't remember the exact law. But when the person wrote the summary of it, that basically was the summary. It wasn't necessarily the entire meaning of the law. But I get what you're saying. I don't know how the 13th Amendment applies, though, from the corporations thing. The corporations are people too is not necessarily derivative of the 13th Amendment, at least not that I know of. I could be wrong, and definitely correct me if I'm wrong. Trump, most admired man, overtaking Obama in a Gallup poll. No way! No way! Port Phil Court, I don't believe that. I need to look at that one up. I need to check that one out. Well, Wesley Walker, LOL. Oh, you're talking for the last one. The Yankee going to look blood. Uger. Yeah, the sucker of the year. This is easier for you than you're making it. Save a void in the media space where Air America failed. Oh, right. Filled it to make money. Oh, I see. You're saying TYT basically filled a void in the media space and used it as a monetary thing. Look, that's not bad, is it? I mean, you're basically doing a job. You found a niche that you liked. Let's say talking about media and politics. And you go from, like, whoa, I can make money off that niche. And then you fill a space that was not there. That's just good business. The problem comes in is the way your politics interacts with that business. And if your politics is being governed by the business or the other way around. Now, I look at TYT as basically just a media broadcasting thing that just so happened to be to the left. And whatever you want to think of TYT has done good work. I mean, think of the people that it brought into this era of lefty stuff. I mean, I keep saying, I cut my teeth on stuff like TYT, the Cedar, the thing, the Majority Report. This was like years ago, though. I'm talking about like a decade ago, where these guys were basically the main ones out there having these conversations, the Rachel Maddows of the world, the Keith Olbermanns of the world. And so it's like when there was nobody else out there, it makes sense. But as time goes on, and it's like the things that come up, and it's like the takes become worse and worse and worse. Vote Hillary, vote Biden, Russiagate is great, Elizabeth Warren, yeah, she's awesome, she should be totally supported just in the same way Bernie Sanders, and yeah, she totally believes in Medicare. Like, after a while, it becomes like, these are such bad takes, and they perpetuate. And it seems like the bad takes run in line with basically Democratic Party. And it's like, I have a hard time seeing a major difference between MSNBC and TYT, with the exception that TYT is rowdier. It's like MSNBC's rowdier younger brother, but at the end of the day, will tell you to do the exact same thing as MSNBC. Yeah, I get it, but I don't think the negative in that is that they were able to fill a niche, and that niche was basically picking up where Air America left off, having this voice that is not necessarily there presented in the media. I don't think that's bad at all. In fact, I think that's been to the betterment. Me being here now, able to criticize TYT, is to some degree derivative of the fact that TYT existed. Like, so I can't, it's both. That becomes somewhat of a thing. Yes, they filled a niche. Is that bad? No. Did they do good work? Yes. Did they bring people even into the mindset where those people can get further along? The answer is invariably yes, especially if I talk about myself in this case. Does that mean that they are beyond criticism? No. And does that mean they can fuck up? Yes. Does it mean they have been fucking up? Yes. Does it mean that this is some kind of anti-politics stuff? And whether or not that comes or derivative from the business itself, I don't know. But the vote Biden, because honestly, to me, it comes across that it's all being done unconditionally. If there is no demand associated with it, or you can tell your people, look, if Biden is not willing to do X, he shouldn't get your vote. If you're not willing to be there, then it's unconditional. And any taking advantage of you is at that point a rational act. Why is it not a rational act? If I can pee in your cornflakes and know I'm going to get your vote tomorrow, why do I need to listen to you for anything? And that's kind of the position that TYT and the Majority Report and all of these other lefty organizations that is immediately willing to be obedient to the Democratic Party without having any demand and any consequence. There's your problem. If you're looking for a problem, that's it. The reason that your politics and your political body has become fundamentally undetached from what you want and is no longer representative of the population is because basically, like I said before, the base are the people who put money into their pockets. Everybody else just votes for them. And until people realize that voting is not something that should be done just perfunctory, that should be a consequence to bad behavior. That consequence to the bad behavior is that, yeah, those people fail. The problem in American politics is that the parties have basically ended up with this almost deal of sorts, that both of them can suck remorselessly. And because you only have two of those parties and you can block out other parties from getting into the political space, you've basically cordoned off your politics. You can keep the politics on this very specific level. The media are full of basically people who are part of that particular class. They're going to talk about that stuff from that particular class perspective. So you're not going to get this class consciousness approach in any of the mainstream media. The political heads are paid by basically the same people who own the media stations. Meaning your world is governed by this type of sham of a political act, as if the politics is only between these two pillars. You're being screwed. You're being had. And this is being done with almost a wink and a nod between basically the two parties that in no way represent the interests of the American public and are both captured by corporate interests. You don't have two parties in this country. How is this different than a communist country? Be very honest for the moment. You had a one-party state, which was basically a communist party. You have a one capitalist party state looking through that lens. one capitalist party. You had gradients in the Soviet Union where you had the hardliners versus the leftliners. You had the people who were anti-communist, let's say like the Yeltsins of the world. And they were more honest in realizing that our framing of the world is basically the same. Yes, we're part of the same party, but there are factions within the context of that party. That is all you have. You have a capitalist party with two factions that basically see the world in basically the exact same ways. Well, a huge amount of propaganda to make it look as if you have choice. Where's the choice? How do you vote against Wall Street? How do you vote against this military budget? You can't vote against it. The president of the United States, who the people basically voted in office, basically denied that budget, and Congress is saying, yeah, fuck the president, we're going to override the veto. And the sad part about it is they have to fight so hard just to give $2,000 fucking dollars to the American public. They have to give it trillions. Do you realize they raised your taxes in order to give plutocrats a tax cut? Put that shit in perspective. People who need money least, they raise your taxes to give them that cash. And so now you have to fight so hard for $2,000, and in fighting that hard for $2,000, all of a sudden we're supposed to applaud. Thank you. Thank you. You gave us $2,000. Get the fuck out of here. This is a slap in the face. And the American public should be pissed. Mad as hell. Think of the amount of labor, energy, physical, mental energies that you put into making this system go. Whatever job you do, it doesn't matter whatever job you do. You can be driving Uber, you can be driving Lyft, all of those things are instrumental in making this society go. And when it comes to society hitting the skids, for whatever particular reason, the people who you put in that office who's supposed to represent your interests, look around at what they did in other countries and look at what they did in the United States. It is appalling what they did in this country. And this slap in the face stimulus that these guys are passing, where the bulk of the omnibus bill and everything else wasn't going to America, which is where the bulk, pretty much all of that money should have been going. Even if Congress took a bit of pork out, fair enough, the majority of that money should have been going to the American public. And that is not the way this turned out. Yeah. Like, share, and of course, subscribe. Thanks all. Right here. Papunaya Shelley. I miss Jamal playing chess. Oh, we were just talking about that. My wife and I were just talking about that. I was like, maybe I should bring the chess thing on. See, the thing is, Papunaya, I started playing this game, I think I've said it before, Beyond Earth Civ. And the game takes so long to play. It takes hours and hours to play. And so you can never really just sit there and play one game out. Also, the higher up in the levels you get, like I play on the Apollo level, it takes forever to move. So it expands the amount of time off of the game. My point is, I had been investing so much into playing that playing chess pretty much fell off the table. At some point, it'll start up again. I don't know when, but at some point. We were thinking about doing like one game a day or something like that, or one game a week or something, and analyzing the game. My rule was, if you lose, you got to analyze it. You can't just go past to the next game. You got to sit there and analyze it. It has to hurt. Bill O'Reilly. Progressives should adopt a data and Dr. Strange strategy. I don't know how. I mean, isn't that what they're doing? I mean, they're basically just voting Biden, voting, Clinton, voting whoever the Democrat put up. At which point does that exact same behavior going to give you a different result? I mean, the thing is, Dr. Strange, his opponent didn't want to be there. And in the other one, Data's opponent didn't want to be there. But the Democratic Party at this point is establishment. It's the thing that is there that we're trying to remove. And at this point, until we start exerting leverage on the political space and showing that leverage can be exerted and showing that we're willing to be distant and separate and distinct, until that opposition takes place, then there is nothing else. Meaning progressives that are willing to basically vote Democrat. I mean, for God's sake, Cornel West voted Joe Biden. And so if you even get your radicals that can't even make a demand, you're in a problem. I'm making the point that the reason why your political space has become so decapitated is because it's lost all faith and belief that the public itself would either rebel or throw them out on their ass. Because in the Democrats' mind, the demographics alone in and of itself will be enough for us to win. The identity politics in and of itself will be enough for us to win. We can talk about identity as opposed to, and use that in lieu of actual economic relief for those actual identities that we use as props. They have all sorts of these gimmicks and stuff that they believe is going to be in and of itself sufficient, where they don't have to do those things. The decapitation comes because they don't believe they have to do those things. They believe that they're going to get your support regardless. Even if it's a race to the bottom, it's a race to the bottom that they think they're going to get enough of from the standpoint of the molehill. Not to mention, the moment that you add in mail-in voting, oh man, they can even point to more things. Hey, we even have more people voting for us now. Until it gets to the point where they know they can lose, where the public makes a demand, where the public is willing to go through with that demand, when shit starts getting, let's say, real, when strikes start to take place, when industries start to shut down because people start recognizing that their labor and that they are part of a larger society, and that larger society supposedly is being governed and represented, and it is not being represented, and they connect that labor to that representation. When you get there, that's when things start to change. I don't know where we are in that, and it doesn't seem like we're there yet. God knows. Should be there already. Like, share, and subscribe. By the way, we're almost at 30,000 subscribers. I got to be honest, I don't know what to do for that. I am so excited about that for some reason. But look, I want to thank all of you for being a part of this channel. This channel has had a rough year, to put it mildly. Or I have had a rough year. I guess I'm the figurehead at the channel. But we're almost at 30,000. And so at the end of it, I suppose we came out stronger. This was the first year where I started working on the radio full time. And so trying to do radio and try to do this. And for the most part, I think towards the end of the year, it came up in this kind of decent a balance between the two. After I got ill, no, the balance pretty much went out the window. But it seems like we're ending the year much stronger than we did towards the middle part of the year. I just want to say thank you all. That's all. This channel has been ticking along. I'm trying to still do good content and put stuff out. And you guys have stayed. So I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share, and I'm definitely going to say subscribe. Thanks all.